Hey, listeners, and welcome to the You Are Epic podcast. This is where we honour the people who've helped build not just our industry, but our communities. I'm Angela Hucker, and I am so glad that you're here. So, I'm taking the time to sit down with people who've been in construction for years, people who've been through the ups, the downs, and everything in between. You're going to hear real stories of resilience, growth, and moments that shaped who they are. This podcast is for those that want to learn more from people who've been walking this path for some time, and they're helping to lift up others and quietly making a difference along the way. It's also to show you that your journey matters and your voice matters. And in case you've forgotten, you are epic. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Kate Hogan, an award-winning construction professional and social impact leader. As stakeholder engagement and social procurement manager at John Holland, Kate drives inclusion and legacy outcomes on major projects across Victoria. With experience spanning Tier 1 contractors, steel manufacturing, and social enterprises, she brings a rare blend of commercial expertise and community focus to every project she leads. So thank you for joining us, Kate. It's such an honour to talk to you after all this time.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. So, Kate, the one question that I always love to start with our guests, because I'm really curious how people get started in this industry. So, how did you get started all those years ago?
Yeah, it is an interesting question, and everybody I've asked that question of has a different response. So
Yeah.
I think I probably came to it just in a roundabout way by chance. I mean, I think it's something I've always been interested in because my grandfather was a builder. He was a residential builder. And I can remember being a little girl and playing in his timber yard and being very fascinated by the smells and the tools and all the different things. But it never, being a girl born in the 80s, it never occurred to
Mm,
me that a career in construction was a thing. So
mm,
I probably came to it via the steel industry, actually. So I
okay.
worked for Blue Scope Steel for a long time, about 11 years. And then it just transitioned from one role to another from there. So I've had a very varied career. I've done customer service, I've done marketing, I've done social enterprise, and then in my most recent role now, I'm on the Eastern Freeway upgrade project with the Hoddle to Burke Alliance, and I'm doing a dual role as stakeholder engagement and social procurement manager. So it was not a linear
No,
journey or pathway at all. And I
no.
think as social procurement's evolved, especially in Victoria over the
Yeah.
last sort of 5 to 7 years, it's something that I naturally was drawn to and I think just showed an interest in. And then it's just, yeah, built organically from that.
I love that. And so what's the thing that kind of with social procurement that sort of warms you up with that? Like what's that interest that you find with that?
I think it's social procurement is so interesting. And when people ask me what it is or what does it mean,
Mm,
I think at its core, it means leaving a legacy behind that's bigger than the building that we've built. So
mm,
what draws me to it, I guess, is the opportunity to not only leave behind a legacy in the form of the building that we've all played a part in
mm,
delivering, even though I don't know how to build anything, but I still play a part in the delivery team. Um, but it's about, offering somebody who may not otherwise have an opportunity to get into this industry a really long and rewarding career.
mm,
And it's the construction industry does have so much to offer, and
mm.
it's not just when people who don't understand what it is picture it, they might just picture someone on site in work boots and hard hat and high vis, or they'll picture a lollipop person
Yeah.
controlling traffic, or the stereotypical kind of roles. But
Mm,
once you start speaking to people about it and say, you could be a well-being manager, you could do social procurement, you could do enviro, there's
mm,
sustainability, there is delivery in terms of, the boots on the ground if that's what you want to do, but there is this whole team in the background that you would never know exists. And I think
mm,
it's really rewarding being able to speak to people about that and then give them the opportunity to be involved in it.
Mm. And there is, it's, like certainly a lot of people don't realize that ecosystem that actually surrounds the
Yeah,
boots on the ground to actually
yeah,
be able to get those boots on the ground as well, because and there's a role for everyone, like you said, well-being and social procurement, and there's enviro and all these different things, but there is literally a whole ecosystem that supports it as well.
yeah, yeah, and it's huge, and it's largely invisible. I
It
think
is.
especially to the public, what they see is people on site pouring concrete or laying
Mm,
asphalt, or they don't they have no concept of what goes on behind the scenes. But that's yeah, that being part of that team is such an enormous opportunity for, everybody to be involved in. And it shouldn't just be, you know, the people that went to university and studied construction management. We need to, with a really finite talent pool, especially in
mm,
Australia, we need to think a bit more laterally about who we're including in that talent pipeline, and that's what social procurement does.
mm. So, can you just touch on a little bit about this social procurement? Because there's a few people who may not understand what it is and what it looks like and how it works. And you're an expert in this space, and would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So Victoria is probably, well, not probably, they are leaps and bounds ahead of all the other states in terms of
Mm,
what social procurement looks like. So the Victorian government's been very progressive in making sure that their money doesn't just go towards building a building; it creates social change at the same time.
mm, mm,
So, on every government project that we build, we'll have a range of targets we need to meet. And broadly speaking, they're defined as social procurement, but they'll cover all sorts of things. So, as you alluded to earlier, it might be employment of priority job seekers, Aboriginal people, females under the building equality policy, but it's also under the local jobs first policy, an opportunity for smaller and medium enterprises to participate in large, big build projects,
mm,
um, giving opportunities to apprentices, trainees, and cadets to work on these projects to grow their career in turn, and also engaging social benefit suppliers, so Indigenous businesses, social enterprises, and disability enterprises. So it's quite comprehensive. Um, as you can imagine, on a large scale project like a big build job, it's really quite a lot of work to administer those targets. But the way that I speak to my team about it is to say it's not just here's our targets as a number on a page, and we don't just want to tick the box and then flick it
mm,
and we've done it. We want to say, okay, how can we go about employing a priority job seeker that may never have worked in construction before? What opportunities could we give them within our team to do comms and stakeholder, or to do environment, or and to build them up from the ground, and the skills that they learn on this project they can take with them and have a really long and healthy career. So
mm.
that's what social procurement's all about.
And with like I was at the Social Traders Convene conference last week in Melbourne, where it was all about social enterprises. And it's about, like being able to engage with those social enterprises who are out there to actually make a social impact as well.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
and that comes in
they're
many
amazing.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I think industry is very clever, and if you give them a problem to solve, they'll show you a solution. And I
Mm,
think over the last few years, we've seen a social benefit supplier pop up for almost every need there is in the supply chain. And yeah, they're they're pretty amazing, really. It's also a matter of changing the way that you think about procuring in construction. So rather than just going to the same suppliers we always have, again,
mm,
let's think laterally and think, okay, well, how can we integrate social benefit suppliers into this? So there was a great example on my previous project with the social enterprise called Ability Works, and they hire people with disability that may not otherwise
mm.
have an employment opportunity. And so they had somebody who was blind operating a drill press for us, and he
Wow.
drilled the holes in all the brackets that went into our facade. So
Wow.
they will employ someone and then tailor the job to that person. So they'd actually built him a drill rig where the brackets can only go in one way, so he couldn't make a mistake. There's a guard on it, so he can't hurt himself, and that's his job. And like, it's, traditionally we might have just gone to any old manufacturer to get that sort of thing made, but it was actually a subby who was doing that on our behalf through Ability Works. So it's a huge part of what I do is not only educating our own project teams, but we pass down all our contractual social procurement obligations to our subcontractors to contribute to as well. And as you can imagine, they're at sort of varying levels of sophistication as to what they do and don't understand about what social procurement means. So a huge part of my role is that education with them to say, okay, well, what are the types of things you will need to procure for this job, or what are the types of things we could get an Indigenous business to help you with, or a social benefit supplier, and help them sort of map out how they'll meet that contractual obligation, but also create good at the same time.
And so with that, like what's kind of, you've been in this space for some time. Is there a business that has kind of, and obviously appreciate confidentiality as well, but is there a business that kind of has been a real standout for you that's like, wow, I'd never thought something like this was possible and look at what they're doing to help make a difference?
There's probably too many for you to tell
Yeah.
you. I think you would have heard if you went to convene last week,
Yeah.
how many there are and how
Oh,
varied what they do is. And you hear them speak and you're like, wow, that's
it was,
amazing. Like, it's
yes,
just
it
so
was,
impressive. So,
wow.
there's probably a few that spring to mind. I think one of the social enterprises that I've really enjoyed seeing how they've grown over the last few years, they're called Reboot. So
Yes.
you may have come across them. So
They
what
were
they
there last week. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So what they do is to help people, generally incarcerated people, but ex-offenders or those affected by the justice system, find paid employment. But it's not just about, okay, here's a person that's an ex-offender, chuck them in that job over there. They'll work with that person one-on-one for quite a long time, even whilst they're incarcerated, and they go above and beyond. They'll say to the person, okay, when you get out, how are we going to make sure you're not hanging around with Bob, who was a bad influence? Do you have a mobile phone, or do you need us to help you reconnect it? Do you know what your internet banking password is? Let's reset that. Where, we could get you a job in Preston, so you can't live in Frankston because that's not going to be practical. Let's help you get a house around that area. Like, they absolutely go above and beyond to make sure that person succeeds. So, yeah, I love working with Job and Anthony. They're unreal. Another one that I've, again, seen sort of come from nothing and grow, and it's really beautiful, is an Indigenous business called Holly and Co. So Holly is a First Nations woman who has a disability. She's got an intellectual disability. And her dad, Jonathan, is a director of a fire services business. So he saw that, there's the construction industry is obviously massive, and there's so much room for everybody to, get in on it. And he thought, well, how can I help Holly to do that? So he set up an Indigenous business for Holly. Holly's the director, and so she's involved in the business day to day. And they initially started out selling fire services consumables, so sprinkler heads and things like that. And so our Ballarat-based hospital project was Holly and Co.'s first job.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, it's amazing to see how that's grown over time. And so Jonathan's vision is that he would like Holly to have financial surety when he and his wife are no longer here. And so 50% of the profits go into a trust for Holly to access when she's older, and the other 50% go to Berry Street, which is where Holly was fostered from when she was a baby.
Oh,
So
wow.
Jonathan and his wife already had 4 kids of their own, and they were asked to take Holly and her sister for a weekend for respite because they foster cared. And he said, we did. And then they said, could you have them for 2 weeks? And they said, yep, sure. And then he said that 2 weeks just turned into a lifetime, and they've,
Inter-
and they've never left. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been really beautiful to see how that's
So,
grown, and the opportunity that that's going to afford Holly later in life is just
mm.
amazing. So we've had Holly come to John Holland head office to have a look around, and she very proudly gave me a Holly and Co hoodie. So I wear
Oh,
it sometimes when I see her, and she's
oh,
just like, "Oh, that's my hoodie."
yeah,
And yeah, she's come to site to Ballarat as well, and she talked to our project team, and yeah, they're just, yeah, you can tell by the smile on my face that I just like,
yeah.
I love dealing with them. I love speaking to them. They're just such good people making a difference.
Yeah, I love that. And just such beautiful stories. And that was the thing that I found last week. Like, as you said, there's the different things that companies are doing. And, it's not about that profit part, it's about
No.
that people part and how they can help make a difference in people's lives. And, you touched on Reboot, and I met them last week, and they were just incredible with what they're
Yeah.
doing, the stories and everything.
Yeah.
What I'd love to hear from your perspective, because you're obviously successfully doing this, and appreciate there's some targets that's being set by the government there in Victoria, but for people who aren't in Victoria and looking at this space about what to do but don't know how to get started, what kind of things, based on your experience, could they actually start to do? Because there's obviously a little bit of hesitation, that I sense as well in the industry about engaging with social enterprises and, what
Mhm.
could they do, and do they have the business experience to be able
Yeah.
to work with tier ones? And so what sort of things could, as some advice that you could help pass on to other businesses that aren't in Victoria where they've got this mandated, where they can actually start implementing some of this to help their business as well and make this
Yeah.
impact?
Yeah. Good question. Um, my recommendation would probably be to start with the key certifying bodies. So for social enterprise, that's social traders.
Mm,
And then for Indigenous business nationwide, that's Supply Nation. They've got
mm,
really extensive business directories on their website, and you can type in either a business name or a need, and it will bring you up suggested social benefit suppliers that can do that. And then I'd honestly just recommend having a chat like you and I are now, just over Teams, even 15 or 20 minutes. And most of the time, you get a really good feel for whether you're going to be a good fit, even culturally, organisation to organisation.
mm,
Um, just listen to them and learn a little bit more about what they do, because I think you'd be genuinely surprised at the breadth and depth of the
yeah,
capability in the social benefit supplier sector,
yeah,
not just in Victoria, but nationwide. And yeah, you're right. Often there is that hesitation, or particularly with commercial teams who are responsible for mitigating risk and counting the dollars. That's
yeah.
their job. They can be quite cynical about those types of businesses and think like, oh, they're not making a profit. Like, why do they do this? What's in it for them?
Mm,
And I get that when you've got that really commercial mindset. Um, and I suppose where there's money to be made, there sometimes are bad actors in the space. That's,
mm,
we can't deny that. And that's where I always like to meet with the person so I get a gut feel. Um,
mm,
but yeah, it is. Even our commercial director said to me a little while ago when I was explaining to him the nuances between a social enterprise, an Indigenous business, a disability enterprise. And I said, oh, to get their certification, social enterprises have to give away 50% of their profits. And he went, there's people that do that? I was like, yeah, they're surprised. Yes, I get your genuine surprise, but yeah, there are. Yeah, amazingly. So, yes. Yeah. So, I'd really recommend, even just in the beginning, doing desktop research. And you'll find also that social benefit suppliers are very well connected with one another. So, I just mentioned Reboot to you, you already know them and you've met
mm,
them. So it's, they may not be able to, they may not have the capability, say, if you said to them, oh, here's a $5 million package over here, they may not have the capability to do that. But I think we also need to change the way we think about how we can involve
mm,
them. So it might be, okay, they don't have the capability to do that big of a package. Could we carve out a bit of that scope? Could we link them in with a commercial supplier that they can partner with to also help that
mm.
commercial subcontractor meet their contractual obligations with us? Like, how can we do this a little bit differently?
Mm. And from like when we look at the way the industry is at the moment, and that's great advice, and thank you for sharing that. And when we look at the way the industry is at the moment, like there is a shortage. Everyone's
Yeah,
trying to tap into the same labor pool, everyone's trying to
yeah,
access the same stuff. And this is a different way to actually be able to achieve, project deliveries as well, thinking
definitely.
outside the box, like you touched on earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the in Victoria, the building equality policy is a good example of that. They've set targets and they're quite ambitious targets around female participation in the industry. I suppose the missing link there, and it's been acknowledged, is that it's great to have targets. If you don't, they are targets that reach for the stars, but if
Mm.
you don't do that, nothing changes. So we
Mm.
have to have something in place, but probably the missing link there is that we need to be talking particularly to girls in school. And
Mm.
I personally would say probably high school's too late. You need to be
Mm.
even going into primary schools and saying to, little 5-year-old Kate, whose granddad was a builder,
Yeah.
did you know you can do that? You could be a carpenter. You
Yeah.
could be a plumber because it's I think it's getting better now in this generation, but certainly when I was a kid, that was never a thing. And we need to
Mm.
be going in and building the talent pipeline at that point, even just so girls are thinking differently about how to participate. And then one day, I hope to not have to have targets around any of this and that it's just
Oh,
been integrated into the supply chain and it's just something that's done business as usual. And we don't, I don't want to do myself out of a job. But the best thing would be that I don't have a job to run and lead this because everybody just does it by default. And I have no doubt it will get there eventually. But
mm.
yeah, it can be, I think construction is very much of the mindset that this is how we've always done it and it
Yeah.
works. And so, what I'm good at is pouring concrete. And I don't want to do all this other stuff over here that you've asked me to do. It's like I have my ute with my dog in the back of it, and you're asking me to do more work that's I don't understand and it's hard. And
Yeah.
I've got to go home at night and do my invoicing and then a social procurement report for you. But I always like to say to them, this is tricky to navigate and it's new to a lot of people and I get it
Mm.
and that's exactly why I have a job.
Mm.
So ask me any question. I am here to help you. Businesses the size of John Holland deem this important enough to have a dedicated role to focus on it.
Mm.
So use me as a resource. Explain to me what you need to do on site and then I can link you in to
Mm.
whoever may be able to help you. So and it's once once they get past the mindset of, oh, okay, they don't just want to tick a box, it is that they want to do something properly, and they then start behaving in a different manner and they can see the impact that it makes to a person,
Mm.
that's when you get the connection. Not when
Yeah.
they see, I've asked you to meet 2% spend and you got 2.5%. Yep, tick the box, flick it, don't want to look at that anymore. It's when I explain to them, oh, did you know that through Reboot or through Amara Pave, who's another amazing social enterprise, or through this Indigenous business over here, you've been able to give these two people their start in construction, or
Mm.
you've been able to help Fred save enough money for a deposit on a house, or that's when with that narrative underneath the numbers, that's when you get the connection and when people will start to change their mindset. But the reality is because the industry has operated this way for so long, that's going to be a long, slow burn. So you've got to be quite resilient because
Mm.
yeah, but I honestly some days this job just feels like hitting your head on a brick wall and
Yeah.
you've got to be like, okay, that's not working. I've got to pivot here. What do I do?
Well, it's a massive change transformation piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because like you said, everyone's of the belief this is how it's always been done. And then it's this whole transformation piece to make people realize that this is actually something, that's actually making an impact for the good of the industry as well. But to get
Yes.
from there to there, there's a bit of work that needs to be done because it doesn't just happen.
No, absolutely. No, you need people in roles like mine leading it. And I think tier ones are very much on board and every tier one will have somebody like me in a role like this. And in fact, John Holland's got multiple people in roles like mine, and so do other builders for that matter. And I think the other good thing is rightly or wrongly, and our bosses might not like it, but all of us in these roles will often talk
Yeah.
and say to one another, like I'll talk to David Campbell at Lend Lease or Laura Brown at Multiplex or Nicole Donison from Icon and say, hey, do you know this social enterprise, or have you used them before, or I've got this tricky thing, how have you gone about it? And
Yeah.
we all, because we're all of that mindset that
Yeah.
it's a rising tide lifts all boats, we all help one another. Yeah, because we've all, chances are, if I haven't come across it before, David might have, or
Yeah.
Laura has, or so that's really lovely as well.
And what I'd love to ask from your perspective as well, so for a social enterprise to be able to then work with these tier ones, because sometimes there's a few barriers in that regards with, there's contracts that get put in place and different
Yeah,
things like that and requirements and, deliverables and milestones and payment terms and all these sorts of
yeah,
contractual issues. What can a social, well, there's probably two questions. So the first one is, for a social enterprise starting out that is wanting to get into the construction industry, it's then obviously finding how can they get into that and what do they need to do to be able to find the right people and get in and show the value that they bring to the table to be able to help that construction company. What do they need to be doing?
yeah, yeah. That's a really good question, and you're right. Something that lots of social enterprises would find tricky to navigate,
Mm,
especially in a big business like John Holland. I mean, I work here, and I can
mm,
sometimes find it hard to navigate.
yeah,
So, if you're
yeah,
on the outside, yeah, it's really, really tricky.
yeah,
I would really recommend going through your governing body. So, if it's a social enterprise, through social traders, they're very well networked and connected within each of the tier ones. They will deal with a key person within those tier one businesses, and the key person, so for instance, in John Holland, that key person's Melissa Raby. So she's our national head of social impact. She knows exactly who everybody is on which
mm,
project, and she will filter it. So she'll understand from social traders, okay, what is this social enterprise? What's their capability? Where are they located? What project would they like to be on? And if, for instance, they said, oh, we're located in Fairfield, using Ability Works as the example, we're located in Fairfield and we can do, drilling holes in brackets, she'd go, great, Kate's on the Eastern Freeway project. I'll link you in with Kate. So
mm,
because otherwise it just can be so tricky. I mean,
mm,
and I will often get businesses reach out to me, especially via LinkedIn, and I'll say, oh, I'm just not the right person.
yeah,
In fairness to them, they don't know how to navigate it, but
no,
that's why those governing bodies are there. That's what they
mm,
do, and that's what they do best. And you're going to get a lot more traction doing it that way rather than just trying to do it, scattergun via LinkedIn or via
mm.
cold call. Or that's certainly the way I would recommend going about it.
Okay, no, that's great to know. And that will hopefully help a lot of social enterprises who are wanting to get into this space. So then the second part to that is when they actually get in and let's say they then are awarded some work, there's obviously that part then that, I'm ex tier one, I've worked for a tier one myself. Some of the contracts can be quite onerous,
Yeah.
to say the least. And, to help social enterprises understand what their contractual obligations are and then how to be able to navigate that as well without, because there's obviously a risk allocation that happens in that regards as well.
Mhm.
What can they do in that space to be able to successfully navigate once they've been awarded a piece of work as well to make sure that they're managing the risk, but it's not actually going to have a huge detrimental impact on them as well financially.
Yeah. I think if we take a step back from that, it's probably someone in a role like mine, making sure that our commercial teams understand that, this is a business that's capable and can perform the work, but may not be used to the complexity of a construction contract or the payment terms or what their reporting obligations are. Or so just to be mindful when having those conversations. And
Mm,
also, yes, you're right to your point about risk mitigation. That is their job. But do we need to give them a 100-page short form subcontract, or could we pare that back in light of the type of business that they are and give them a 50-page contract
mm,
that will do the same job? Could we
mm,
look at payment terms and what that looks like in light of the fact that they're giving away 50% of their profits, or just framing it in that way before they're having the conversation with the social benefit supplier,
Mm.
and then doing the same from the social benefit supplier's perspective, and just making sure that everybody understands each other. But, I suppose our role is the conduit in that situation,
Yeah.
to try and understand where both parties are coming from and to help, you know, make that happy medium.
Yeah.
The reality is that, yeah, the contracts can be quite arduous. Let's be honest, they're a bit boring. They're like, unless you're a commercial person and that's your jam. For me, they're
Yeah.
boring. One of my colleagues, she studied law, so she loves it. She's like, "Oh, give
Oh.
me one to read end to end," and I'm like, "Oh, I'd rather die." I can't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that it's probably more so helping our commercial teams understand you're dealing with a business that operates in a different sense to perhaps
Mm.
what you're used to traditionally. So just understand that, and temper your language, and just have an understanding of where they're coming from.
Mm. Yeah. No, that's great advice because yeah, that can be kind of a bit of the sticking point as well. And it's not to say these social enterprises aren't commercially savvy or anything like that, but a lot
No.
of them are more focused on, social impact as well. And that may
Yes,
not be their strong skill as well to be able to navigate that. So,
absolutely.
and we all know contracts in the construction industry can be very detailed. So,
Extremely. And it's also sometimes, even from a traditional subcontractor's perspective, like I had one on a previous project, and they went through their massive telephone book contract, and when they got to the social procurement section, they just put lines through it, and they're like, "We don't do that." And my commercial team was like, "Well, no, you have to. That's not a departure." This was a private project, not a government
yeah,
project. But
yeah,
um and so that particular subcontractor had to spend a lot of time with, saying like, okay, explain to me how you're operating now. So there were targets around priority job seekers, for instance.
mm,
Explain to me what your workforce composition looks like now. And they explained it. I'm like, you're actually already doing it. You could meet these targets. And they were like, oh, are we? I'm like,
mm,
yeah, you've got social housing tenants, you've got veterans, you've got
mm,
refugees, you've got ex-offenders. They had the whole gamut. I'm like, you're actually doing it. You're just not
mm,
calling it social procurement.
yeah,
And they were like, oh, okay, well, what would you need from me? And I said, just a list of all your employees by month, and not even their name, just their employee numbers, fine. The hours that they worked, and whether they fit any of those cohorts. And I'll just list them in a
mm,
spreadsheet for you, and you can literally just tick. That's all we need. And so I got them into the habit of reporting every month, and they actually ended up doing quite well on their
wow,
targets. And
awesome,
that he was funny, their project manager. When he finished, they got PC, and he sent me their final report, and he sent me an email saying, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my last report. Yeah, like, see you on the next project." And I wrote back and said, "Oh, yeah, it is great. Thank you. You've actually done a really good job. You should be proud of yourself, because you didn't think you were doing it. You are doing it, and now you
yeah,
know. So that's going to set you up in good stead for the next
yeah,
project." And he wrote back and he said, "Yeah, thank you so much. I usually hate all this social procurement stuff, but with you, I enjoyed it."
yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Oh, highest praise.
Oh, nice. Well done. That's so good.
But that's what it's about. It's about, like, that took me 18 months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah.
like, it's about changing those mindsets really slowly over time. And you can't be like, well, you have to do this. It says
Mm,
this in your contract. They're just gonna push back on you straight away and
mm,
go, nah, well, I'm not doing it.
yeah.
Can't tell
And
me
it
what to
seems
do.
like even that example that you've given, it's like there's this big knowledge gap about what it actually is.
Huge, huge, huge. And that's so much of what we do is education. And I
Mm,
think, like, Victoria is very progressive in terms of what social procurement looks like holistically, but they're also very good at going, here's a policy, there you go, industry, you work that out. And
yep.
so it's a lot, and industry gets it and goes, oh God,
Oh,
how am I going to do this? And
yes.
if the construction industry is anything, it's very clever and enterprising. And if you give every day, I say to people all the time, every day in construction is a problem. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean
No.
that that's how it is. And it's like you've forever got to be agile and pivoting. And I think that's we're very good at it. And
Mm.
it's, it's from a social procurement perspective, it's working. The proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's this big transformation piece as well that's going on with that education of what it actually is to,
Yes.
people not actually realizing they're doing it. But is
Yeah.
this something like someone like the governing body, like social traders or the government, or someone needs to get more involved in to bring that awareness about, particularly because Victoria has got those targets as well? What would you like to see?
Um, yeah, look, I think the governing bodies like Social Traders, like Supply Nation, Kinaway in Victoria, I think they do a pretty good job at educating the market, but sometimes it's that you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it
Yeah.
drink.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you will forever have some people with a mindset like, this is woke. This is a load of crap. I don't care about it. Why are you making me do this? And that's truthfully was probably the mindset of the subby in the previous example.
Mm.
It's again, once you can connect them to the stories, like, okay, don't think about it as a target on a piece of paper that's a woke
Mm.
load of crap. Think about it as, I can help Kate, who's never had a job, get her start in what will be a really rewarding and promising career with longevity. Think about it like that. Think about the person that you're helping. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think those governing bodies do a pretty good job. I think the government is very progressive in terms of even these policies are nothing like what's in any other state. So, and
No.
there's a lot of thought gone into them, but that where that gap is missing is that industry, you work out how to do that. And industry often does not have the support to go, oh, this is really hard. How do I go about navigating this? That there's that gap. And I suppose that's where we have banded together as an industry and we know each other and we will all help each other. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of how we're getting around it, for want of a better term. But support for contractors is something that's not really there day to
Mm.
day. So
Mm.
that would be great to see more of. Um, Whether that's a possibility or not, I don't know. But I think regardless of if it's there or if it's not, these policies are here to stay. They're a great thing. They're making great change, and we are getting it done, and
Yeah.
we're making the difference.
And I love that how you say, like this industry is, every day it's just changed because if you're on a construction site, you might have some bad weather coming in and you've got to work things out, or you might have a concrete truck that's held up, so you need to reschedule, or you might have some crew that, has blown numbers or whatever, or, some people called in sick. So you constantly, every day, it is constantly change, change, change. And it's just when it comes to this stuff, it's a different piece of change that's happening, and
Yes.
it's just actually just helping, work together to be able to navigate it, like what you're doing with connecting with, the Lend Leases and the Icons and, those companies as well, to brainstorm it together and work it out. So,
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, again, the proof is in the way that the policies have played out. So something like the Local Jobs First policy, which has had a couple of different iterations, but been around for quite a long time now, around local content and apprentice trainee and cadet hours under the MPSG. I find subcontractors are very au fait with that. As soon as you start speaking to them about local content and MPSG, they're like, "Oh yeah, we get it. Done it on the last 20 projects. Yep, I can give you 12% apprentices and local content. You want 95, that'll be 98." Like, they get it. But
yeah,
then the newer ones, like social procurement framework, where you're spending with the social benefit suppliers, or particularly the BEP, the building quality policy, they'll be like, "Oh, I can't do
uh,
that. I don't
yeah,
know what this means."
yeah,
So, but they're relatively new, particularly BEP. So,
yeah,
that's, again, I say to them, it's hard. I get it. That's why I've got a job. Like,
mm,
what do you need to know? Anything we do now, you can use as an example for the next project that you tender for the next builder. So
Mm,
let's set you up right and make sure that you're doing what you need to do, both from a contractual perspective, so the commercial team aren't hounding you, and
mm.
just that you're doing the right thing by the target and that you're doing it properly.
Yeah.
And then you can speak to that moving forward, and you're going to be ahead of the game. So it will just take time, but
And
that's
it
okay.
is. It's an education piece, is what it is. You know, it's the same as
Huge.
like you
Yeah.
said about that local jobs, and they're doing that, they get that. But when that first came in, there was probably a little bit of resistance, like, oh, how are we going to do this? So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So it will just take time, but that's okay. We're patient. We're in it for the long haul.
Oh, aren't we? That's why we're still here all these years later.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and that's great wisdom there, Kate. So, what I'd love to ask you in closing, if you had some words of wisdom that you could help pass on to the next generation or new cohorts of people coming into the industry, something that it's like, if I ever got the opportunity to tell this to someone, and it could be about anything, it could be about social procurement, it could be just about, being in the industry or anything like that. What would your words of wisdom be that you'd love to be able to pass on to someone?
I'd like to tell someone, particularly kids, to be curious. If you're driving past a building site and you think, oh, what's that crane there for? Or what does a concrete truck driver do? Or get a bit curious, ask questions. I think if I've learned anything in being in this industry for so long, it's that the people in it, no matter the discipline, are really passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
And everybody that I've come across has been really keen to impart their knowledge.
Yes.
It's their jam. They want to tell you what they do. They're proud of it. They'll,
Yeah.
say, have you ever driven past such and such in the city? I built that. Or,
Yeah.
there's a wealth of knowledge out there. And I'd say be curious. Don't think of construction as the guy with the hard hat on in his boots or the lollipop person, or think about it from everybody that sits behind the scenes that you
Mm.
can't see. And you may not know what that looks like, and that's fine, but
Mm.
reach out to someone like you're a brilliant advocate for construction. Reach out to him and go, hey, I'm in year 10 and I'm studying. I'm really interested in this. Who could you link me up with to have a chat to? Or um, I think, yeah, because it offers people such a fantastic career opportunity, and
Mm.
it's so varied. Even having done it for so long, literally every day is different. I
Yeah.
never know what I'm going to get. I'm never bored. I'm sometimes a bit stressed and overworked, but that's okay. That's another challenge that you learn to work around. But um, it's such an
Yeah.
interesting industry, and I've met so many brilliant people, and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I've no desire to switch to a different industry now. Like I think construction's got me for life.
And especially because of the impact that you're doing now in the social procurement space as well, like that's just another part that, for me, yes, it would be stressful and, it is that whole education piece and things like that and working with smaller companies and stuff. But it's something that that there's some purpose there and you're helping others and you're making a
Oh,
difference in your own way. So,
Oh, for sure. And I think you can't look at it as, a day by day proposition. You've got to look back on it in chunks of time, because we're
yeah,
doing this long, slow burn, but it is so cup filling to look at people like Holly, who's got the opportunity to
yeah,
run her own business. And, I think, oh, I've played a little part in that. Like
yeah.
that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, it's really, there's a lot of satisfaction in it, for
Yeah, and
sure.
even with that contractor that you spoke about, and that was 18 months of working with them. And, at the beginning, it probably would have been a few hair pulling moments, I imagine.
Oh,
But
definitely. For both of us.
yeah, for both of you. But then you get to the 18 months and it's like, oh, okay, that was worth it. I've invested the time, I've
Definitely.
imparted some knowledge and help them get some skills and stuff as well, so they know what to do moving forward. And that's making an impact and making a difference.
For
So
sure. Yeah.
so thank you for everything you're doing, Kate, for the industry and for the different social enterprises that you're helping and that you're supporting, and you're giving them an opportunity as well to be able to work with some tier one contractors as well, and just the work that you're doing, because it is one of those jobs that's kind of behind the scenes. It's not well known, it's not well recognized, but you are making a difference. And, I just want to thank you for what you're doing and recognize, the opportunities that you're giving to people as well. So thank you so much for
Oh, thank
everything that
you.
you're doing.
That's lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. I hope this conversation gave you something that you can take with you, whether it be a little bit of insight, inspiration, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone. If it resonated with you, please share because we're better when we help build each other up. And remember that your experience, your story, and your journey, it all matters more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected, and never forget you are epic.